Hello, people. So I'm going to try something different here. This is not something I usually do, but it's a different approach, I guess, just for originality and just for the record. I've watched a video by a guy called Charles Veitch, and he made a direct message to just stop oil and animal rebellion. So basically, that made me think, well, maybe that's not a bad idea. Um, I think there's some flaws in it. I don't think that you can reason with extremists, but I'm going to give this a shot. If there's any chance it could change just a few minds and maybe get people to introspect just a little bit, that is not a bad thing. So here it goes. So this is a direct message. If you're an activist with Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, Just Stop Oil, Animal Rebellion, or any of those offshoots, we know they're all interconnected. So I'm 37 years old. I'm a millennial. Um, and I am not totally devoid or detached from activism in my own life. Back in 2003, well, actually 2002, 2003, like a lot of people, I felt strongly about the lead up to the Iraq War. Now, I think I've learned things since then that maybe I didn't appreciate at the time, but I still think history has vindicated that stance. Now, I actively protested in the sense that I went to rallies, I held placards, and I protested. I felt that, if I'm being totally honest, I did not understand all the issues, but I did feel that we were going to a war that was wrong, that would kill thousands of people. It did. And I felt that the WND claim was very flawed. I didn't weigh maybe enough on Saddam's flouting of UN sanctions and his brutal record. Perhaps I didn't weigh enough into that, but in a way, suffice to say, I felt strongly enough about it to be active, and I was. Now, at the time, I was 17, 18. Throughout my university years, I was politically active. I was actually a member of the Liberal Democrats for 5 years, and I stood twice for council elections unsuccessfully, but the second time around, I done much better. I tripled my own result. Very useful experience. Just to be clear, I'm not currently a member of any political party. I want to be very clear about that. Now, you might see some of my other videos and you might think, oh, well, this guy's against us, that's it. Well, I'm not going to lie, I am very critical of your tactics. This is just for the record, just to show that I'm not simply denouncing you, I'm not simply condemning you. I'm trying this tactic to reach out to you, to try and get you to consider reason. Now, one of the main arguments that is used is we have no choice because the government doesn't listen, and nothing's changed regarding green policies. Now, you believe that climate change is a pressing emergency, this is what you say at least, and therefore something has to be done. And you feel the government doesn't go anywhere near far enough. You feel that there's broken promises. Well, I understand that. I understand the frustration of feeling powerless, that you're trying to get things to change and it isn't changing. It isn't what you want it to be. I don't think some of your demands are realistic. But leaving that aside, the basic point about being frustrated, I do relate to that. I feel frustrated about a lot of things. I feel very frustrated, for example, about the situation with law and order in this country. And no, I'm not just talking about this subject. I'm talking about general criminality, things like burglary and common assault and that sort of thing. I feel very frustrated with the Sentencing Council of England and Wales. I feel immensely frustrated about those things. So what do, I upload videos to draw attention to the issues. I have written to ministers. Um, I've lobbied my MP. Well, actually, on this issue, not so much her, but the point is, I've tried to be active. Now, have I got results? Not necessarily. I've got some feedback from the Sentencing Council. I've got feedback from the Ministry of Justice. It's not exactly what I would like to see. So you might say, oh, well, that just proves that pressure doesn't work. Let's look at this another way. Let's look at if I was to take the similar approach that you people were taking. So, okay, I'm frustrated with the legal system. Now, let's say I go to the headquarters of the Sentencing Council in London. and I vandalize their building, right? I get a spray can and I vandalize their building. Will that help a single victim of crime? No. I would just be charged with the damage, um, and that would be it. I'd have a criminal record, which would make it difficult for my job. I'm hoping to be a freelance journalist. Now, that would make it difficult to get ahead in anything I do, actually. Let's say I went to a court of law and chained myself outside, or let's say I glued myself to a road near a court of law. Well, what I would do is hold up traffic. I would not help a single victim of crime. The point I'm driving at here is the very causes that you say that you're all about, which is, fuel poverty, climate change, and so on. I challenge you to really ask yourselves, really, hand on heart, be honest with yourselves. Is what you're doing, that is gluing your hands to roads, climbing structures like the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge, vandalizing works of art, vandalizing buildings, do these sort of direct action tactics, which are illegal, I know you don't care about that, but they are illegal, just for the record, these sort of tactics, are they actually changing anything? Are they helping flooded villages in Pakistan? Are they helping farmers in Ethiopia or the Horn of Africa more generally deal with drought? Are they helping struggling pensioners in the UK dealing with fuel poverty? Now, if you can say yes, our actions are actually making a difference, then you might be onto something. But if you were being honest with yourselves, you would have to accept it is not working. It just isn't working. Now, another argument you make is, well, it gets people talking about the issues to an extent. To an extent, vast majority of the dialogue on this, the conversations on this, the debate on this has been about your tactics, not about the issues. People are not talking as a result of your actions about fuel poverty. They're not talking about climate change, not to the same extent, at least, as they're talking about what you're doing. Then maybe you just want to shock. Maybe, some of you are very young. You're 18, 19, 20 years old. So I get it. You want to make your mark. You have this pent up frustration. You want to, you know, you maybe see yourselves as being like the anti-Vietnam War generation of the 60s, or even my generation, people who were protesting against the Iraq War 20 years ago. Um, there's a lot of things you could say that maybe inspire you. I know you often compare yourselves to the civil rights movement in the United States and the suffragettes here. Well, let's look at the suffragettes, because this is a comparison that's often made. Yes, the suffragettes engaged in some direct action, some of it quite dangerous. They planted bombs in letterboxes. But let's look at the history. The peak of suffragette activity was 1913, okay? The Representation of the People Act, which gave women over the age of 30, only the age of 30 at that point, the right to vote. That was 1918. The full women's suffrage came in 1928, I believe. But that was long after the peak of suffragette activity. That just really puts a big dent in the argument that that sort of activity led to women getting the vote, because it doesn't correlate. What more likely got women to vote was the changing labour market of World War One. So whilst many men were off on the front, women done jobs that men traditionally done, and they done it just as well. And that showed, that things like that sort of changing demographic, a big part of what was going on. So, you might disregard all these points. You might say, well, we'll keep pushing and the government will take notice. Okay, the government has taken notice. They've introduced the public order bill, um, which you hate and you say is a clampdown on the right to protest. But surely that shows that you're failing. They have introduced this bill to tackle your behaviour. Okay, they haven't introduced a bill saying, "Oh, we're going to do more on climate change," or "We're going to." It just proves that your tactics are having an effect, not the effect that you want. So why continue? Why not look in on yourselves and think this is not working? Okay. Suella Braverman, rather undiplomatically, I guess, described you as guardian reading, tofu eating, wokarati. That's the official government response to your antics. That's coming from the Home Secretary, and her predecessor had a similar stance. Now, that might make you very angry, but what does that say? It doesn't say that this government is going to listen to you. And Labour, you might think, oh, well, Labour will. But Keir Starmer will be under pressure to prove that he's on the side of the law-abiding majority. So, Labour will be foolish to openly back you. That will cost them votes. Um, Now, if all of this means nothing to you, what about your own safety? Okay, to hell with the rest of us, but what about your own safety? Okay, that stunt on the bridge, those guys could have fallen off. They would have been killed instantly. Now, maybe you'll think that will martyrize them. It wouldn't. Most people might say, oh, well, it's unfortunate that they brought it on themselves. Those guys wouldn't become martyrs, except maybe within your movement, but not to the wider public. It wouldn't happen. Um, you are putting yourselves in situations where you're infuriating the public. Now, this has already been spoken about a lot. The callousness in which you're deliberately stopping people getting to hospital appointments, stopping distraught parents getting their babies to appointments. Now, when you have a stunt like that, which happened on the Queen Elizabeth II bridge, that's thousands of people. Now, you might say, oh, but they'll thank us in the long run. They'll thank us in the long run because this is for their own good. You don't know. You're messing with people's lives. That is what you're doing. You're messing with people's lives. You don't know what thousands of stories are going on there. Maybe someone's trying to get to a relative's funeral, and that's the only opportunity they can get. So you're callously denying them the chance to do that. There's hospital appointments. That's not hyperbole. There's substantial evidence that hospital appointments have been disrupted by your antics. Um, and as for, the vandalism of art, you might quote, I know that Van Gogh was quoted, apparently he would have approved of this. But the point is, all you come across as is vandals. You're very similar to the Red Guards in China in the 1960s. Again, a bit of history for you here. They were dogmatic. They were zealous. They believed they were doing the right thing. They believed they had to turn China upside down to rebuild China. So they vandalized old temples and anything that represented the old ways. Now, the Chinese government, albeit a totalitarian government, recognizes the importance of culture. How does cultural vandalism win an argument? How does cultural vandalism get your point across? Look at the response to that activist who put the feces over the Captain Tom Memorial. She faced absolute hatred, absolute contempt. And I think we're going to see a situation where some of you are going to get seriously hurt because you will push someone too far. Some parents who's trying to get their child to hospital will basically blow their top and they might strike out. You might find yourself the victim of assault, but it's because you have pushed someone too far. How can you look at a distraught person and callously refuse to listen to what they're saying? So I get that, you're probably think, oh, this guy's not on our side. Well, I'm not a climate change denier. I'm not one of these people that says there's no problems. I think there are pressing issues. I think, for example, plastic waste is a major problem. I think that needs to be tackled drastically. I think it's a disgrace how companies waste that. So I'm not totally divorced from some of the things you say that you care about. The reason I say you care is because the tactics are not working. They're not doing anything to change issues around climate change. Why don't you come up with some entrepreneurial ideas for green businesses? Why don't you support green businesses? You know, some of you, I'm sure, are quite intelligent. Why don't you come up with some practical ideas that don't involve hurting the general public? If you say it's about pressuring the government, why don't you target the government? You're targeting ordinary people. What's the result? Ordinary people are turning against you. You have utterly failed. Now, you don't have to agree with me, but my views here echo millions of people out there who are utterly fed up with you. There will be some who support you, Where a democracy, there's always going to be a plurality of opinions, but the vast majority are against you. And, the right to protest does not and never has extended to the right to hurt other people. You can say these actions are peaceful, but just because you're not throwing punches or throwing bombs does not make you peaceful. You're causing profound stress. Is that peaceful? You're stopping people getting to urgent appointments. Is that peaceful? Or is that reckless? Is that dangerous? Is that harmful? It's harmful. It's not peaceful. So don't think that because you're sitting down and not doing anything, then that's a peaceful act. You're endangering lives. You're actually endangering lives. The stunts on the road when activists literally went out onto the road. What if a car had swerved to avoid them and then a pileup occurred and there were fatalities? Thankfully, it didn't happen, but it could have. So I implore you, don't destroy your young lives, okay? You have the rest of your lives ahead of you. Don't destroy it by getting a criminal record, okay? Because that's going to make it difficult for you to get employment. Don't be stupid. Be practical. This campaign has utterly, utterly failed. It hasn't generated more debate on the issues. It's only turned the public against you. I'm not saying don't be angry. I'm not saying do nothing. I'm not saying just agree with the government. You can protest against the government. There's a lot of things about the government I don't like. You can protest against the government, but just do it responsibly. This policing bill, look into it. It's not saying you cannot protest, okay? It's only targeting specific criminal acts. It's targeting this sort of disruptive behavior that is hurting and infuriating the wider public. So I urge you, please, please show some humility and ask yourselves, is this really working? What am I achieving here? What am I achieving? Maybe you feel like you're being heroic. Maybe you feel that because the public are angry with you and hate you, that kind of makes you feel like you're a martyr. But it doesn't. It really doesn't. In the future, when we may have more floods and hotter summers, people are not going to look back and thank you. That's not what's going to happen because the tactics are not actually addressing climate change, are they? Gluing your hands to a motorway, I mean, look at what the resources that you're using. That glue has oil extract in it. Look at the other apparatus you use. If you were really, really being honest, you would turn up naked. But that's not going to happen because, you'll be freezing. Um, so I implore you, do not ruin your own lives because believe me, when people get involved with zealous ideology, whether it be Islamist or far right, or in this case, eco zealotry, and you might say, oh, it's nothing to do with that, it's completely different. But ask yourselves, are you introspecting? Are you asking yourselves, is this right? And if you're not, then I would suggest you're dogmatic and you are becoming radicalized. That's what that means. So if you cannot introspect and you cannot look at these tactics, then you're becoming radicalized. And my concern is a lot of young lives are going to be wasted. You might think you'll look back on this and be proud of yourselves, but you're going to ruin your lives because you're going to be getting a criminal record, which will make it hard for you to get jobs. Maybe in the future when you get tired of all of this, you might think, okay, I want to settle down now. Or maybe I want to do something to help green issues legitimately. But even then, it'll be difficult because you want to join a green company. You may find that's difficult because of your criminal record. So, for goodness sake, stop. This has utterly failed. 3 years of this. 3 years of this. Nothing has changed. So, I'm not saying stop campaigning. I'm not saying don't be angry. You can still campaign. You can lobby. And if you say all of that doesn't work, think of creative ideas that doesn't involve hurting the public. Think of green sustainability. Around the world, young people especially have come up with very good, innovative ideas for sustainability. What's to say British young people can't do this as well? But for goodness sake, stop hurting the public. Have some compassion, have some empathy, because I'm telling you right now, if you continue doing this, the public are just going to hate you. And as for the older members, for you, I have less sympathy because you're radicalizing young minds. If you're the same age as me, 37, what the hell? And to the even older members, I've seen retired doctors, retired GP practitioners involved, excuse me, retired clergymen. Where's a Christian charity in deliberately hurting other people? Where is the medical ethics of, stopping people getting to hospital appointments? You're a disgrace. And in my opinion, you should either be defrocked or use your medical license if you're still practicing. Um, so that's how I see it. Now, I accept this video probably, it's unlikely to change many minds, but some of you can please, please, please just consider these things. I'm not asking you to agree with everything. I'm asking you to please just consider some of these points. Ask yourselves, is it working? It isn't.